Hello, and welcome to another episode of Otaku and Chill. Today with me, I have Chris.
Hiyo.
Greg.
Hello.
Sawyer.
Hello.
And Reggie.
Ohio.
Now, we were going to do the Dragon Ball Z today, but Christian won't be here. So today, we are going to do animes that are considered classics, right?
Yeah, the must-sees.
Yeah, and do they hold up today?
But what is a classic?
So,
Right.
I guess classics would you consider good animes that came out like in the 60s, 70s, 80s.
Like, just old, right? Like, I think that's where it's hard, because...
Before 2000.
We were talking about it, right. So, to be old, like, classic car or anything, it's old, but it still is, like, great, right? But then at the same time, like, I mean, say Christian again, not even here, and he's still in spirit, but, like, for him, his first was something newer, like, Naruto, which is still pretty old. I guess if you really think about when it first started out, it's essentially old, but it becomes a classic.
It is a classic shonen, I would say.
Yeah. Are there ones that are, as soon as they come out, they're almost like, man, classic right away? Like, what was that song? Jujutsu Kaisen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like already it's a classic, even though it's like it just came out. It's just a thing. But I think in the sense you're talking, right? It's ones that are just like, man, it's good no matter when we can watch it 30 years from now and be like, that was still really good. Like,
Right.
It was big for its time, but then they kind of fade away because new stuff keeps coming out, right?
So more so like defining of the genre than necessarily age. Because like being younger, for me, like anything from like the 60s or 70s, like I've probably never seen it. So like I'm not going to think of those as classics versus
Sure.
like somebody who's older might. Versus like for me, I'm like classics is like basically I feel like some people classics is whatever you
Toonami.
got whatever
Yeah.
you got in on. So like the classic like DBZ at grandma's house with cousins or like growing up with Naruto. Like for me, those are the ones that like kind of got me in and then I grew up with. So for me, those are more like classics than like the old Speed Racer or something like that. That's
Because that's like, again, for me, that was my first.
Reggie's
that was
an
my
old guy.
You never know it. I'm gonna live the longest.
But that's true.
No, Speed Racer was one of my first. Like, watched with my mom, and we just like die how the subtitles did not match, like, or the dub did not match their mouths because there wasn't no subtitles. Just like and we're just like, what? What is he actually
Look,
saying?
there's Godzilla.
And every once in a while
They
we
just run their
pause
mouth.
it, like make up our own subtitles and stuff. But it just, it's older. I think the style is it's classic. Even if you like Google like Speed Racer original, and you're like, whoa, this is what anime looked like back then. But there's. But then at the same time, like, again, I would say like, I don't even know. Like we were talking Trigon or old Midnight Toonami. Or
That was actually that was
Adult
my
Swim.
first anime, and that one came out in '98.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, I would consider that a classic,
Wow.
even though the 2000 is right there.
It is. So, well, you already brought it up. So, going into the first thing, what would you say? Like, break it down for us. Like, that's one of the ones you would say it's a must. You have to watch it.
So I would say that it's not for everybody because that does bring in like a certain kind of crowd. I mean, it's one guy, he's alone. It's a slower anime. Is the main character, his thing is do not kill kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's for everybody. So must watch. I think you
don't
think? I mean, I want to watch it. But I wouldn't recommend it to someone who's trying to get into anime.
No, you see, I respect
okay.
that.
Yeah.
I respect that because, like, back then there was a lot of that going on. Like, things were slower paced. Because of the animation budgets and stuff, and the technology, the action scenes and all the fight, they were minimalist at the time of what we know and enjoy now. So, it's hard for some people to go back and watch that and not be like, okay, that they did like one sword slash and everyone was like, oh, and now it's like nowadays you have really advanced, technical fight scenes in anime.
so like for example, like that could be really one of those like gaps. I don't know if it's too soon to talk about like generational gaps in anime, but like for people who grew up or like newer people who are starting and they're like getting exposed to like some of the newer fights. Jujutsu Kaisen's got some good stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like Fate Zero.
Yeah, unlimited budget
All
works.
of the Fate, yeah.
Yeah.
Like if you started on that and got exposed to that as like, oh, this is what you're at your level of expectations, and then you go back and you watch maybe not even something as old as like Speed Racer, just like OG Dragon Ball, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like-
even OG Dragon Ball.
But because I think like the animation, air quotes, wasn't as good back then, I feel like a lot of the stories and like the other aspects of the show are really good.
Not always, but yeah.
It's heightened. It's definitely heightened. Like for me, I think Trigon is amazing. Only because you got the beginning, right? You always were wondering what is going on. What there was so much that was to your imagination. It was a post-apocalyptic world, and you're like, well, what are they going to explain? What happened? They explain how society ended up like this. They had like a really cool take on it. Like there was this giant light bulbs everywhere. Like their energy source was really weird, really like out of there. The guy's arm turned to a giant cannon and blew up the moon.
Yeah.
It's not even a spoiler. It's all the first episode.
Yeah.
But like. I did like, he was the non-combat, the I don't want to fight warrior. And you did have a lot of that. You had that in Rurouni Kenshin. You had it in a lot.
Yeah.
I just like the concept. It was like people would shoot. He was a gunman, and people would shoot him, and he would like use the trajectory. He would shoot next to their bullets and make them move out of the way, and like like people were just unloading on him. He's just like, and then like would duck, and nothing would happen to him. And so that was cool. And then introduced the brother, and there's people after him, and like I think they kind of kept it going along. The funny thing though is the old school cliche, like every like anime from the 80s, 90s had some guy with a giant cross or some dude with a cross on. There's like some reverend guy that walked around.
Reverend guy that
Was
like
there?
complete opposite of his religious beliefs.
Yeah, I'm a preacher, but I kill. Like
Don't let that fool you.
yeah, he had the gun. Or it was like a giant cannon in the cross, but it also popped open. And he had like some
Like-
It was like a
He had
multi-tool.
handguns.
Desert Eagles and
Yeah.
a shotgun and
They
like
had that in like Blue Exorcist too, I think.
yeah,
Yeah.
100% the same.
You know what? Classic, and it's ironic because we're going to be talking about it. Dragon Ball Z. Those fights are just classic. Like they still hold up.
They hold up only because, like, at the time, Dragon Ball Z kind of like instituted that.
Yeah, I was gonna
like
say,
I'm
it
so
paved the
fast
way.
that like you can't see how fast I'm moving, so their arms are a blur, like their
Yeah.
kicks and stuff are a blur. That I feel like Dragon Ball really pioneered that whole like insanely fast like fighting.
Yeah.
That's like.
You just knew. You had to you
And,
use your
I mean, it's
imagination.
easier to animate too, quite frankly. But not only
Yeah.
that, it's still
They still
it's
put in
still
those moments
badass.
like when the hit did land, you were like, oh, you got him.
You're like, yeah.
But I've been watching a lot of the Dragon Ball Z because we're going to be doing an episode on it.
Yeah.
And it still holds up. It still looks good. It like you go back and you watch like I remember Yu Hakusho. I love it.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
there are times in the tournament fights where I'm like, okay, this was a lot cooler back in the day.
Again, consider he's 16, as most of them are. How much could a 16-year-old do? Especially if like I'm in that tournament, you know what I mean? Here's a little kid, like get out of here. Like, okay, he landed a kick on me, and I didn't like it, but still.
Yeah, the newer stuff, it does make it harder to watch older stuff when they're so progressed into like not only the graphics and animation, but like with the fights, and how accurate they would be and
Right.
skill levels,
Well, you've always got like the one-up syndrome. Like if you're going to be a shonen, well, my fights need to be better than all the other.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Or like even just on the other side of it, like animators have been doing this now for like 20, 30 years sometimes. Like some of those guys are just like absolute masters of that craft.
Oh
Yeah, that's
So-
true.
Oh, yeah. And
They have
even
a
when they
lot of
pull out, they're like,
experience.
"Go ahead, do it without me." And like, say, even
Yeah.
when Super came back, and it was like, looked like my freaking 6-year-old drew the faces. Like, what is going on here?
So-
Everyone can draw Dragon Ball Z. Who did this?
I still think the biggest character development in Dragon Ball was Vegeta's neck. Go look at his OG pictures. Go look at his
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm distracting everyone.
Okay.
We're doing some research here.
What the what?
Research.
Like,
Anyway, back to
All
anime.
right. So,
Can't forget that stuff.
what anime would you guys recommend
like classic,
like classic, yeah, like if
So
you
either it's older, forgotten by time,
Yeah.
or like it's just one of those ones. It's like you have to see it. Like,
Yeah.
it's gonna be good no matter who watches it.
Mhm.
When did Death Note come out?
Ooh, let's see. I mean, I can hear you. So, well, first off, give us an idea what is Death Note. I think we still need to do that a little bit with Triangle, but
Yeah.
Everyone knows what Death Note
we
is.
drop.
There
Some
might
people
be-
don't.
That's true.
Some people
All right.
might have not
We
watched
name
it.
drop without explaining what these are.
Yeah.
We gotta sell them a little bit
It's-
to the people.
I guess the premise of the story is there's this high school kid who's gonna like absolute top of his class genius, going into like a top university, and like you find out he scores like 100% on his test.
like
or
a
whatever.
genius.
He's a genius, but life to him is kind of like boring, and he sees all this inequality and like, what's the point of being this smart? He can't do anything about it. And behold, he finds this thing called the Death Note, and it's this notebook that you can write someone's name in, and they die. They die of a heart attack, and there's all
exactly
sorts
how
of
he says, right?
Yeah,
He's like plane crashes on someone.
well, they discuss like that's a big part of it is like how he can use the rules to his advantage and like what he can do with it, and he starts to like, realize he can change the world with this, and so it's about this like it's this god complex anime where he has this, this power that's bestowed upon him and using his genius, and it's about the best minds in the world, basically, mainly this detective by the name of L who tries to like hunt him down and figure out who this mass murderer is, because there's no murder weapon like this that's in the real world, essentially. So he's got to like try and find this guy based on the information he has. It's about like the psychological battle of them going back and forth trying to figure out who the other is and trying to get to the other person first.
Yeah.
Death Note makes you want to root for the bad guy.
Yeah.
The whole time you're like,
yes and no.
I hope he
I was
gets
gonna
away with
say,
it.
I'm the weirdo that like
Yes
I
and no.
wanted it. I wanted L to go.
Yeah, a lot of people want L to be to
How did you feel about
catch
M?
him. About what? About
M?
M? Okay, a lot of people
Copy
fell
and paste
off
character.
fall
I was
off
gonna
like
say.
people have like there's a divide, I feel, in the Death Note community where a lot of people are like, after, well, spoilers, right? After L dies,
Something happens.
something happens. A new
Disposed.
yeah, a new detective comes in and takes his place, kind of like his successor, and it's like N and M, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people are like, oh, after L dies, it gets kind of silly, and like a lot of the assumptions they make are really out there. But if you pay close attention to the details in the anime, I don't think it really is that out there. And I feel like the way they pick up after L dies is because it all comes back together at the end. And if you pay close attention, Mello's death has a very close connection as to why N figured out why L
it
is
was all psychological.
Kira.
He gave himself up.
Yeah,
to help him
and
catch.
so it took the two of them to catch it, and I thought that was brilliant, and I
Yeah.
loved every second of it,
I
all the way
liked
through.
them.
And I think it's a classic, and I've used Death Note to get many people who like haven't seen anime into anime. So
It is a good start.
It's a must see. Yeah.
Okay.
It's the tension, I think,
I agree.
is what draws people when they start to watch it. They feel that like sheer tension.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's a very easy gateway anime because it's not that big of a stretch. Like, there's nothing super wild about it. Like, other people like superpowers, superheroes, like stuff from other shows. Like, compared to that, like just it being so simple and straightforward. With some extra steps involved, I can kill anybody who I can name and put a face to.
Yeah.
It's
It's
an
not
easy
flashy.
enough concept, and then it makes the anime basically be about the story, and they write it really good, and it's like the mental chess match type style.
Yeah.
Which I think
I love. That's like some of my favorite.
for like if you're gonna call mental chess match like a genre within anime, then it's a classic in that. Like,
yeah, absolutely. It
the
definitely
mental battle.
It definitely pioneered the mental and the god complex.
because like you were talking about with Trigun, I think that classics are going to be more within like the subsets of animes. Like, some people might consider like DBZ like a classic, but if somebody only watches slice of life anime, then that's not the classic air quotes anime that I would.
like you said,
suggest
genre
to them.
defining.
Yeah.
Genre defining for sure.
I mean, and because it's not an action anime, I feel like the animation isn't as important.
Bro, that tennis match though.
Oh boy! Oh man!
All right, that's right. Yeah,
I was on the
tennis
edge of my
action.
seat.
I did forget about the tennis match.
But if I try to win too hard, he might think that I.
That was hilarious that you say that because every time I even hear Death Note, I immediately think tennis because I weirdly got into like I